This episode of Fintech Insider is brought to you by Fireblocks, the stablecoin infrastructure platform trusted by top global businesses such as Visa, BNP Paribas, Revolut, and more. Fireblocks powers over $100 billion in monthly stablecoin volume, helping PSPs, fintechs, remitters, and banks issue, move, and manage stablecoins, all securely and with built-in compliance. Get complete control to build your stablecoin strategy, manage liquidity, and on-off ramp in over 60 currencies, all at scale. Learn more at fireblocks.com.
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar, zero patience for slow walkers, those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night, have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
Good afternoon, my name is David Brear. Welcome to the very first Fintech Insider. On a weekly basis, you're going to be hearing from some of the smartest people in the industry. The four of us will bring you the latest news.
Wow. I have to say I'm kind of in shock, but there it is. What you've just heard is the very first time we ever hit record on Fintech Insider. To be honest, we had absolutely no idea what we were starting back then. It was a scrappy podcast. It was honest. It was driven out of pure passion for fintech, for the things that we really wanted to see in the industry, the change that actually we were seeing in the conversations that we were having with people. And for us, it was about starting those conversations that really mattered. And here we are today, 999 episodes later. So everybody, welcome to episode 1000 of Fintech Insider. That is a ridiculous number to say out loud. And honestly, it's a bit weird saying it, I'll be honest. When we kicked this off, it was just us. It was a mic, literally one of them, a Zoom recorder in the middle of the table, and a ridiculous amount of love for this weird and wonderful thing that we call fintech. Since then, we've seen challenger banks go mainstream. We've seen crypto rise and fall and rise and fall and rise and the regulation evolve, and the innovation in fintech really pushed the boundaries that we didn't even really know existed. And we've been really lucky enough to have some of the brightest minds and biggest characters join us for this ride on the podcast. But more than anything, this show has always been about community. It's about people who care deeply and making financial services better, fairer, faster, more human. And that's really what's driven us for 1,000 episodes. And it's what will keep driving us for the next 1,000 episodes. So whether you've been here since episode 1 or whether this is the weirdest first time tuning in ever, thank you very much. This isn't just our milestone, it's very much yours. Episode 1000. Here we go. Today, we're going to be hearing from some of our incredible people who have helped us make this podcast what it is, from our earliest contributors to the most regular voices. They'll be sharing their top fintech moments, the things that have shaped the industry most, since we first hit record back in July of 2016. Goodness me. But before we dive into that, as always, I am not alone on the show. I'm joined by 3 Fintech Insider VIPs, some of the legendary hosts, who'll be helping us celebrate today. They really should need no introductions to you. I'm sure you all know their voices from a distance, but let's meet them anyway. First off, we have someone who has been a relative newbie compared to the rest of the panel, but a regular on the hosting duty since 2022, I believe. David Barton-Grimley, Fintech Strategy Director at 11FS. How's it going, DBG?
Hello. It's good. It's good to be here with you all around this celebratory table. I am drinking beer.
Yeah, it feels very us in that regard, doesn't it?
I don't normally drink beer during the podcast, but I'm drinking beer.
A little bit of lubrication. For everybody listening to this, the second half of the show might get a little bit silly, but let's see where it goes. DBG, what's the standout memory from your experience of Fintech Insider? Yes. To date, obviously. There's going to be way more of them, but...
So I'm going to go with something non-content, and I'm going to talk about that time that I had an enormous coughing fit. So there was this panel, and they were in this very, very deep conversation. I can't remember what it was, but it was extremely deep. And all of a sudden, I lacked the ability to breathe. I was coughing. You know, the kind of coughing where your eyes start watering. You know, something. So I had to go to the kitchen. I had to get a glass of water, come back, do it. This entire time, they hadn't stopped talking. So I was really worried about the whole podcast being completely, but it was fine. And by the time I had stopped, that was perfect. They ended their points and handed it back to me, and none of you listeners know what actually happened.
See, at that point, you're at some sort of nice dinner party rather than a podcast, aren't you? You could leave the room and the conversation just started flowing.
And it's fine. Yeah.
That's good.
I got off lucky.
It speaks to the great editing that the team do as well, doesn't it? But, all right, next we have somebody who had a bit of a brief hiatus from the podcast for, I mean, two pretty decent reasons, really. But, I mean, time will tell, won't they? But, but back with an absolute bang, Kate Moody, Customer Strategy Director at 11FS. How's it going, Kate?
Yeah, I mean, I've not got beer, but I've got a glass of Prosecco, so I'm very happy. And I've ditched the two children, so even more happy.
Brilliant. Yeah, Kate was, can you come into London and do this face-to-face? We're going to have a drink in it. Yes! Like, immediately. Never has the acceptance of a calendar been so loud. But what about you then? What's your highlight? What's the thing that stands out for you with regards to the podcast?
Oh, gosh, it is, again, a cliche, but it's really hard to pick one. I've just had the opportunity to meet and speak to so many incredible minds from within the fintech industry and financial services more broadly. But I think standing on stage in a church in London with an audience full of fintech enthusiasts, I think for After Dark 25 was pretty damn special. So shout out to everyone that was there. The bagels were pretty awesome as well. So yeah.
Do you know what? I missed out on that one. I remember watching it.
Yeah,
unfold.
I felt bad for saying sorry.
And it did look pretty awesome, I have to say.
It was awesome. I'm not going to lie.
I think I would have struggled doing fintech stuff in a church. I'll be honest with you, but yeah, it looked like a lot of fun. So, and finally, somebody who has also been here since the very, very earliest days of the podcast, way back in 2017. She's mostly been working behind the mic, but more recently has started hosting the show too. Laura Watkins, Director of Media and Marketing at 11FS. How's it going, Laura?
It's good. It's so exciting. It's our 1,000th episode. And like when I joined in 2017, that like it's not that I want to say it didn't seem likely, but it just seems such a far off number. It's so exciting that we're here today.
You can say it didn't seem likely. So I mean the pitch. Come and do this. We're going to do a podcast like 2 or 3 times a week on fintech. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, but look at us now.
Exactly. It's gone pretty well.
What about you? What's your Fintech Insider highlight?
Well, I mean, there's been so many. For like, you know, it's very, very difficult to choose one. While the podcast is obviously about the industry, and I've learned, you know, loads doing this show, and I learn something new every week working on this show and met so many amazing people. Like Kate said, the audience listening are really what makes it the most special. But if I can have 3 standouts.
What? That's not fair.
I wrote the show. After Dark, always a highlight. It will never get old. We began with pizzas in a WeWork to selling out a church and actual gig venues, which is kind of amazing. Just seeing people turn out after work for a kind of work-related podcast, giving up their evening, but also knowing that they're going to have fun, and that's kind of a brand and a community that we've created is just so special. For me, I hosted my first show for International Women's Day back in 2018, I think. And also the support from the listeners was really lovely. I got lots of LinkedIn messages sort of supporting me for sort of stepping out from behind the mic, which is really nice because like I had incredible imposter syndrome the first time I tried this. So just knowing that the kind of audience is on your side is really good.
Yeah, but you heard that first intro, right? Like nobody should have imposter syndrome at all.
And then more recently, I was stopped at this year's Money 2020 Amsterdam when I was wearing a Fintech Insider t-shirt by someone who said they were a listener and to keep up the good work, and like just sort of meeting someone like completely apropos of anything we've organised or anything is just really exciting. And just one extra shout out to the team who have worked on this podcast, past and present, producers, audio engineers, videographers, marketers, the whole shebang, because we would not be here without them.
100%. Always made with love, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Old school vibes. We're all in the same room. We've got alcohol, just like the good old days. We've even got a cake now for 1,000 episodes. This is crazy. We've been told we're not allowed to eat it till later there, everybody. So there'll be no squelchy mouths just yet, but no promises for the second half. Let's get this party started. As we said earlier, we've got clips lined up from some of the most incredible contributors and friends of the show who have helped us make the podcast really what it is, sharing their top fintech moments, the things that have shaped the industry most since we first hit record back in July 2016. So plenty to talk about. Shall we get on with it and see who's got what?
Let's do this.
All right. First two clips then are throwing all the way back to 2016 to two moments that came around the same time as we started the show. The first is from a very good friend of the show and the podcast, Megan Kaywood, from her time at fledgling Starling Bank. And the second is from Nigel Walsh, the global head of insurance at ServiceNow and former co-host of our sister podcast, Fintech Insider.
It was on October 4th of 2016, and it was the first time a Starling card and account were ever used. So Anne, our CEO Julian, and myself had just opened a box of the very first ever Starling debit cards at the office, and we immediately looked at each other and said, we're going shopping. So we ran out of the office. We went to a cafe across the street, a Pret, and chose a random pastry. And then when that small, £1.80 transaction went through, we cheered like it was the moon landing. And so I remember the assistant there being completely baffled as to why we were so excited that our transaction was approved. But for us, it was a moment in history. It was the first time the technology, the card, and the banking license had all come together. And so then we continued on our stress testing. We went to an ATM and changed the PIN successfully. Then we made a small ATM withdrawal successfully. Then we went to an Osprey store and we bought a small purple handbag whose color perfectly matched the Starling card at the time. It was a very regal purple. And then finally we tested failure. So we needed to see if the card would effectively decline when we made a transaction that was too large and exceeded the funds. So we gathered up a bunch of things from Osprey. Thankfully, the assistant there was very supportive of our testing of our new digital bank. And we went up to purchase 3,590 pounds worth of items and waited with bated breath as we tried the transaction. And then the assistant looked at us completely deadpan and said, I'm very sorry, but your transaction's been declined. And we cheered. And it may have looked daft from the outside, but it was the moment where it went from an idea to something real, something alive. And British banking has never been the same since. And so that's my biggest moment in fintech since 2016, and one that's very near and dear to my heart.
Hey folks, Nigel here, your host of Fintech Insiders. Wow, that brings back some fab memories for Sarah, David, and the entire crew doing that. I think over the last 10 years, the most impactful moment for me has to be the launch of Lemonade. It burst onto the scene with a bright, vibrant brand, a brilliant story, and a promise to disrupt insurance how we know it. They did a phenomenal job and are still going strong 10 years later. Proof, if nothing more, that it takes more than an overnight success to disrupt these industries. So with that, a huge congrats to you, David, and the entire 11FS team on episode 1000. Here's to the next 10 years. I'm looking forward to it.
Goodness me. Is it me or does Megan Kaywood get more British by the day? Did she say it's a bit daft then? That was like living in London. It has an effect on people, doesn't it? But I have to say I've had a few of those kind of first transaction moments over the years with sort of metal and mocks and different stuff. We always go and buy a chocolate bar. Like that's our proxy for it. But I'm not really that surprised that Megan went and bought a nice handbag. That's very on brand for her, isn't it? But what do you think to the first Starling transaction? That's a pretty big one, isn't it? Those guys have done a lot to shape the industry over the last decade.
Yeah, absolutely. It's incredible to think, but it started in a way that seems so scrappy, and to now look at what it is today, and a phenomenally successful banking app, but also like an infrastructure provider, everything they're doing behind the scenes in their sort of banking as a service provision as well. So it just kind of really shows the amazing pace of change that we've kind of seen in the time that this show has been running. So yeah, it's mad. I was always kind of hoping that you'd cry whilst you're listening to that. I don't know. That's kind of my ambition for today, is to make David cry.
Just make me cry. Yeah, great. I look forward to that. It's quite easy these days. Nigel, such a great guy, such an amazing host, such great memories of Fintech Insider, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's just really nice to hear from him again, and good that he was happy to be involved and give us his thoughts. And I think that it's such an interesting point, like these kind of brands that were, they made such a difference by speaking to people like humans, and who knew that was so new and innovative at the time, which obviously is the case for Starling and so many others. And particularly in insurtech, that really was unusual. But Lemonade has made a huge success for themselves over the last 10 years and kind of breaking new ground that others are trying to follow along.
Well, both of those brands have done the same thing, haven't they?
100%.
They've raised the bar in insurance and in retail banking.
Definitely.
Retail banking, SME banking platforms, as you say, Kate, as well. So it's pretty good leaders there.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just really nice to hear the sort of passion from Megan, that she remembers exactly the amount of the transaction that she put through on that card for the very first time all those years ago. Like the sort of the kind of passion and persistence that goes into launching like these things. Sort of as Nigel said, there's no such thing as an overnight success. Like all of this hard work goes into it.
Yeah, and you're never certain it's going to work until it does. You know, like actually, you know, a lot of time and effort from loads and loads of people goes into those first transaction things. And, you know, when you hit that till, you're still not 100% certain, you know. So, but DBG, what do you think? Change in insurance, change in retail banking?
So much. It also maybe a bigger reflection on the time. The vibes were just really good back then, like 2016. Even back into 2015 a little bit, we had open banking. There was just a lot of it. Level 39 was just kind of getting into gear.
100%. I mean, that was the OG factory for 11FS and Fintech Insider. Like that's where we started.
And you know, companies like Revolut, for example. I mean, I remember going there on a drinks night and meeting the founders of Revolut. There was just this incredible energy going on at the time. And I was advising a big bank, the CEO of a big bank, which I won't name, and there was this kind of like, oh, there's this thing going on. It's Monzo or Mondo, as it was at the time. Like, this is this thing going on. Like, should we be worried about it? And I was like, yes, here are 50 reasons why you should be slightly concerned about what was going on. But yeah, good vibes.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like you sort of everybody starts feeling like old people because we start reminiscing about 10 years ago. But actually, it kind of feels like those good vibes are coming back. Everything's a cycle, right? And, you know, the things that we've talked about with open banking or, you know, the things that we talked about with different sort of political changes or pressures from a geographical perspective, like it kind of feels like some of the good things are kind of coming back.
Yes.
And some of the good people are coming back as well. So let's see what the next 10 years holds as well. 2,000 episodes, we'll come back and see where we are. All right, next clip comes from another long-time friend of the show, founder and editor-in-chief over at Fintech Finance, Mr. Ali Patterson.
Hello, 11FS and Fintech Insiders. Congratulations on 1,000 episodes. That is wild. I remember very vividly listening to some of the early episodes whilst holding my newborn, who is now look at the bloody size of him. Get out of here. Right, that's how much he has grown during the length of your podcast. So 1,000 episodes is insane. So absolute congratulations there. So my biggest fintech moment since 2016 is actually quite a big one, and that is Stripe, because 2018 Stripe's Series E valuation, it was then worth 2 commerce banks. And it started this incredible trend where a fintech would be valued and measured in units of an incumbent bank. Oh, Revolut now worth more than NatWest. But it was the Stripe and Commerce Bank one, which just, it gave me the giggles, and even through to their monstrous 2021 Series H valuation, where Stripe is now worth 10 commerce banks. I just think that is a very effective way of showing, how huge some of these valuations are and how they maintain that value for a lot of the time, but also that the incumbent banks are being used as a unit of measurement.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Those weird sort of rules of thumb vibes, isn't there? I remember back in my days of being a banker, people would measure in PMs. So it was prime ministers, because the prime minister's salary was £120,000. So it was, how many PMs is this? So it was quite an interesting sort of rule of thumb on that one. I'm not sure if people still do that or not, but
well, the lettuce, the Liz Truss lettuce. We like these benchmarks of measurement in the UK, don't we?
Yeah, how many lettuces is it? Yeah, I mean, Stripe have been just a phenomenon, haven't they? Absolutely amazing to kind of see the things that they've done, and actually just quite often the simplicity in the way in which they go about understanding what consumer problems are and fixing them, just relentlessly doing it over and over again, really. I don't think Stripe is even just like a company anymore. It's about 50 of them, isn't it? But definitely a highlight over the 10 years, getting Patrick Collinson on and getting him to spell it out in very simplistic ways of this is what we do and this is how we make it successful. But it all sounds too bloody obvious when he says it out loud, you know?
Yeah, it was interesting to listen to Ali. It really kind of made me reflect on, I think, one of the biggest shifts I think I've seen in my time being on the show is like listening to how people in the industry talk about fintechs. Like I remember when I first joined 11FS, we speak to lots of people working in those traditional banks, not Commerce Bank, but lots of others. And yeah, it kind of reminds me of that sort of very stereotypical like 5 stages of grief model, like kind of moving initially from that, it was like denial, as you were saying, DBG, like, oh, sure, they've got a nice app, but like we've got the mortgages, boo-hoo. And then it kind of got a bit angry. So, oh, it's not fair, they're under-regulated, they can launch stuff so much faster than us, but it's only because they don't have the scrutiny we do. And then it kind of goes into bargaining, well, maybe we'll just buy one and then it'll be okay. And now I'm trying to work out, like, as you say, like, what are the vibes now? Is it depression? Are we moved into acceptance? But I think it's really interesting, like how people have started to understand like the value of something like Stripe. I think is really interesting, as Ali was saying, kind of I think people have to find something that they do understand to measure the thing that they don't understand. I think that was patently obvious, right? That so many people in the industry just didn't really understand what fintechs were and why they were valuable. And hopefully we've played a part in helping to challenge that. But it's so interesting.
It's weird though, because even now though, I see people sort of debate, like, what is a fintech? Like, so as in, what is the thing that people are buying or buying into? Do you know what I mean? Because actually, and this is something where I think there's a much greater level of maturity now than there was 10 years ago, because it was like a features arms race at the beginning, wasn't it? And actually what people were buying was capability for customers. But actually, I really think like, big lesson over the last 10 years and having, built a couple of these businesses as well. It's like, it's the capabilities internally that are the differentiator. It's the, can you ship software? Can you create sustainable cultures to do that thing consistently? That's the differentiator. Everything else is just today. The tomorrow stuff is, it's the old, sharpening the axe type thing. The companies who can most cheaply create the best software, like a Stripe, win.
Yeah, and these businesses are very much here to stay. Whereas, back in the day in 2016, and there was all sorts of questions about, how viable is this? And we've had a clear out, right? And we have businesses that are, multiple valuations, highly profitable. And I think what's very interesting is the way that incumbent banks have changed the way that they think about some of these businesses' competitors, right? It's all about partnering. I almost don't know any bank out there that is basically saying, oh God, we got to compete with these people. We don't understand what's going on. No, they understand. Yeah. It's about trying to figure out where they play within this ecosystem and how to partner. I mean, partnering is still like so difficult and hard, but I feel like a lot of banks get it now. It's just trying to figure out how do we do this, and how do we maybe become like fintechs ourselves, maybe in some ways?
Yeah,
like JP Morgan, is doing amazing.
I think the acquisition thing is still happening, and it's almost. It's weird for somebody like Stripe that gets so big, but Visa tried to buy Plaid recently, and it was billions. However big somebody gets, there's always a bigger fish, isn't there, out there? And somebody like a JP Morgan with all of the money, can probably buy almost anything if they really wanted to, right?
That's a good point.
I just think it's interesting how there was kind of no lexicon for the scale of this at the beginning. And so you had to measure it against Commerce Bank. But I think that was not just giving context on how expensive a fintech was, but at the time, perhaps people didn't actually know the value of a bank because they hadn't, had to publish information so often. So you're like, okay, this new thing that's Stripe, it's the same size as a Commerce Bank. And you're like, oh, okay, I understand that. That sounds like it's a big number. Whereas now you can just say a value in the billions and people understand that that is a value in its own right. It doesn't need to be compared with an incumbent anymore. And I think that shows how far we've come, that the companies can just be measured in their own right without needing to have the epithet of Revolut is X number of NatWests or Commerce Banks or anything. But yeah, it sort of shows that, like you said, you needed a kind of yardstick to measure against in the beginning, but now they're just measured against themselves, which really shows how far we've come.
Do you reckon the people in Commerce Bank were like, guys,
why us?
Use a different bank.
Yeah. Giving away our value.
Yeah. When it was half of one, they were like, yeah, we got this. And then, now it's 10 of or whatever it is going on. It's just leave us alone, why are you picking on us? All right, guys. Next two clips are pretty closely related, but we couldn't pick between them, so we're going to be showing you both of them. The first is from our most returning contributor on Fintech Insider, Valentina Christensen, who is the Corporate Affairs Director at Oak North, followed by Richard Davies, who is the CEO of one of the UK's most promising fintech companies, rumoured to be on the verge of achieving the golden unicorn status, Alaka Bank.
It's such an amazing achievement for the entire 11FS and Fintech Insider team to have reached 1,000 episodes. So few podcasts will actually reach that milestone, and it just gets better and better with every passing year. I remember meeting David several years ago and having an opportunity to go on the podcast for the first time and being incredibly nervous. And David and the team just made me feel so at ease. And it was an incredibly enjoyable experience rather than a nerve-wracking one. And yeah, several years later, I'm very grateful and humbled to have had the opportunity to be on a few dozen episodes since. And it's just been such an incredible platform that's opened so many doors for me and created so many more opportunities for me. So I can't thank the team enough, and I wish them the best of luck in recording the next 1,000 episodes. What's been my biggest moment in fintech since July 2016? That was actually the month and year that I joined Oak North full-time after being consultancy side and doing a secondment with the business for a year prior to that. So that was a pretty big fintech moment for me personally, but more broadly in the industry, I think the biggest moment was in the immediate aftermath of the COVID lockdowns. Numerous fintechs stepped up to the plate to help. They built new solutions to support customers, and they gained unprecedented legitimacy through distributing government-backed loans through bounce-back lending scheme, the COVID business interruption loan scheme, and captured an estimated 20% of the SME lending market share in the process. So not only boosted their customer bases, but it also positioned them as credible alternatives to high street banks in SME finance. And that's something that's stuck ever since.
This is Richard Davies from Alaka. So everyone that knows me knows that I love all things SME. So my undoubted highlight from the last 9 years that Fintech Insider has been running has to be the massive rise in fintech and challenger SME lending. Just a huge step change. You've now got well over 100 different lenders, banks and non-banks, playing in that space, and well over 60% of that market is now done by that sort of diverse range of lenders rather than the traditional high street banks. And I think it's pretty much the only finance market I can think of that's seen that sort of market share shift to the challengers. And I think that's just such a great thing for the UK businesses and all the sort of jobs that they provide in society, that we've got that really rich and diverse ecosystem. So that definitely is my highlight.
Very, very cool. Good to hear from both of those people. Kate did say trying to make me cry, and Val got very close then, I'm not going to lie. 'Cause, she's been one of the absolute best guests we have on. Like, not just because she's very well spoken, but she's very well read. Like, she always comes insanely well prepared. A bit intimidating sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, I didn't realize that actually the same month that we started the podcast was the same month she started full time at Oak North. So congratulations on your 10-year anniversary as well, Val. Yeah, the changes I guess that we saw through the COVID side of things, that was kind of crazy, right? Like the world. I think I don't know where I was, but it was like 2 or 3 days before lockdown. There was an after dark, wasn't there?
So we locked down on March the 23rd, and we had an after dark on the 11th, I think.
Right. Okay.
Super spreading event, guys.
Yeah, our bad. Sorry, guys.
It was in the rules at the time.
But nobody really knew what was going to happen.
We didn't.
You know? So it's.
I remember you standing up and saying, we're going to shut down the office and it'll probably be about a month. And then we never came back together for about 18 months.
Yeah.
Like, it was mad.
Very weird. But yeah, that whole period feels like such a strange sort of nightmare now as well, in terms of all of the fallout and the changes, and actually some things have never really got back to the way they were, in terms of just walk around London now, and well, I mean tube strike today, but like, you know, normal London is still pretty damn quiet in comparison to what it was, you know, back in 2019, 2018, isn't it? So it's kind of weird.
But it's also, I mean, obviously it was such a hugely difficult, upsetting time. But it is amazing that, despite that, we can still, as Richard was saying, that there are still huge positives that have come from that. It was such, when we do our research and we speak to customers to try and understand kind of what new digital services need to provide, like the thing that we see time and time again is how difficult it is to prompt behavioural change in this space. Like customers, whether that's retail customers or SMEs or even up to corporate level, like changing from one financial service to another requires such a huge push or such a huge pull. And that's what COVID was. Like COVID was this unpredicted but insanely huge trigger moment for change. And as completely agree that actually the changes, the shake-up we've seen in the SME space, I think has been for the better. Businesses needed that cash in their accounts and the incumbents just could not deliver it in time.
Yeah.
And it was fintechs that stepped up and actually stopped a lot of these businesses from going under, got the cash into those businesses that enabled them to meet payroll, keep money going into their employees' accounts. Like it was fundamental. And obviously we've focused in on the SME space here, but this obviously applied globally, and it also applied to retail payments, payments to retail customers in the US. We saw the likes of Cash App and stuff really benefiting from helping to get money into people's pockets. Pix, I mean, we'll cover Pix later with Brazil, again, a huge COVID catalyst. So out of darkness can come a little bit of light.
And cash being driven out of the system more broadly as well. And that's not ever really gone back to the same levels as before as well. So that, almost, you can give all of the pull things as in great features, great capability, whatever, but necessity often wins everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think when the ball really dropped for me was visiting Cornwall at some point during the gap, when we were allowed to actually go. I remember going to this tiny little shop in the middle of nowhere, classic shop that would only, accept cash. And I'm like, oh God, I don't have any cash in my pocket. Here we go again. And the lady running the store was like, no, we don't accept any cash at all. It's only card. And that is the point, to your point, Kate, where things really began to change. And I can't remember what she was using. I think it was Square or something. And it was the fintechs that really came in. And I think the link in to SME banking is one of the big stories that Val does talk a lot about on the podcast. We talk about with her a lot, is the SME lending, not just in the UK, but also globally. Like it's only just beginning. I mean, we're seeing some of these payment services providers like Adyen, for example, become banks themselves and start to go into lending. And so it's not just the challenger banks themselves, it's the distribution models that have now changed and will continue to change. So yeah, I think everyone's right. It comes from that kind of COVID beginning. That's really where it began. So it's so cool.
I mean, it changed quite a lot for us as well in the podcast, right? It was like, let's make a podcast that people listen to on their commute. Oh shit, nobody's commuting.
Yeah.
Like, what do we do? So we had this weird idea of doing a live show, Laura, didn't we?
Yes. So yeah, I mean, firstly, the podcast kept on going, and actually, in a way, the pandemic allowed us to kind of very easily pivot to remote recording, which actually allowed us to have a much more global kind of participation on the podcast, because if we don't have to get everyone to a studio in Shoreditch where they can join from wherever they happen to be, we could open the podcast up to contributors from Singapore, from California, from Africa, from everywhere. So it really allowed us to have a wider range of guests giving their expertise on their own stories. So that was a huge change. That
bit
was great.
weird though. We went from sort of drinking together to drinking on our own in our bedroom, which is it was a weird feeling.
Changes the vibe.
The whole world did that.
And we almost have never done that since until this very moment. So we're kind of recreating the pre-pandemic vibe here today. But yes, and then equally on top of that, because of the remote capabilities, we were able to kind of put this live breakfast show out that was sort of keeping the conversation going with people wherever they happen to be. Because our data showed at the time people were listening to this podcast on their commute, but what do you do if they don't have one? So kind of pivoting kind of to where the audience were and where they wanted to have those conversations with us and kind of continuing that till today.
It felt like trying to give somebody something fun to go and do before they went and did work. So it was like, was it 8:30 till 9 every morning?
Something like that. And then equally we did it with Sam for a little while in the US as well. So for you, I guess it was the afternoon, but repeat for the kind of breakfast time in the US as well. So yeah, just kind of really opening up new conversations with new contributors that we didn't have before, but then some of them have become good friends of the show and returning podcast guests. So yeah,
I remember we had some crazy guests for that as well. If I'm honest, for anybody listening, like recording a podcast and relying on the production team to make you sound reasonably intelligent for 1,000 episodes, great. Doing it live was like a whole different type of ball game. So but we had Damien Hughes on from the High Performance Podcast. We had Deputy Mayor of London. We had Anne Bowden. We had Ashraf Swami. We had just crazy guests, didn't we? So, but it was nice because you were sort of seeing into people's homes.
Yeah, it was kind of a leveler when everyone had to figure out their own internet connection and their own headphone setup and so on.
Well, and all of Ashok is usually the, sharpest dressed, suited, booted, just seeing him at home in his house. It was kind of weird. Did we have Mark Carney on at one point?
Sure.
Did Sam do that one? Because I was I saw Mark Carney's house. That was weird. So it's just an amazing thing to be able to connect to people. But I think the COVID bit, and I remember Alison Rose saying this actually when she was at the bank, is everybody's the same when you're on Zoom. Actually, there's no podium on a Zoom call or a Hangout or whatever. And actually, the ability for anybody to ask anything is always an interesting sort of point to take on that. But actually, from a communication perspective, it kind of leveled out pretty much every organization on the planet. And that's kind of a good thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the people who were more human were the people who were actually present and there. I remember there was this whole tension between do we have our cameras on? Do we have our cameras off? What do you do? There was a real human appreciation that people were going through stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of wonderful. And we've taken some of those behaviors forward into the future of work, shall we say.
I'm surprised. I'll be honest, Richard, my favorite moment with Richard not on the podcast but about the podcast was basically the first time I ever met Richard Davies. Was he called us into when he was working at HSBC, me and Jason. We were no idea what he wants to talk about, and the first sentence that came out of his mouth was, "Are you guys full of shit, or do you actually know what you're talking about?" And we've been friends since then.
I love that.
But yeah, thankfully turns out me and Jason not full of shit, or at least according to Richard. And I think Richard's a pretty good judge of character. So let's go with that. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick breather. Don't go anywhere. Boo will be back with you in just a second. And trust me, Laura's got something super duper special lined up for halftime. You're going to want to stick around for this one.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
In today's fast-changing digital world, proving your company is trustworthy isn't just important for growth, it's essential. And that's why Vanta is here. Vanta helps companies of all sizes get compliant fast and stay that way with industry-leading AI, automation, and continuous monitoring. So whether you're a startup tackling your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001 or an enterprise manager vendor risk, Vanta's trust management platform makes it quicker, easier, and more scalable. Vanta also helps you complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster so you can win bigger deals sooner. The results? According to a recent IDC study, Vanta customers slash over $500,000 a year in costs and are 3 times more productive. Establishing trust isn't optional. Vanta makes it automatic. Visit vanta.com/insider to sign up for a free demo today. That's vanta.com/insider.
Welcome back to episode 1000. It's an unbelievable privilege to be able to say that. Now, I want to put you guys and potentially the listeners to the test. How much do you know about this wonderful show?
Worryingly, off microphone, both me and DBG have said we don't remember anything we ever say. So this is probably going to be quite problematic.
The second that comes out of my mouth.
Let's see. Some of this is you can probably make an educated guess, perhaps. Question 1. What was our first ever episode about?
Fintech.
Shout out if you know. Cheating, Kate.
Big surprise, Kate.
Bizarrely, I think it was very low on fintech. Actually, it was Brexit, right?
It was Brexit.
Yeah, because basically it was we sat around and went, this thing's been basically what's in the news. Like, I remember we had, I still have these now. I have like 50 odd Google alerts, like of like what's the keywords and the things, and they all appear in my mailbox every morning. And that's the first thing that I do is drink a cup of coffee and do that wherever I am in the world, basically. So, but Brexit was just everything in there. So it kind of felt like it was, I feel like we redeemed ourselves on episode 2 though, where we mostly talked about Pokemon, but Brexit was very much the
100%. I mean, if you're going to record an episode at the end of June to go out in July 2016, there was was only one topic you could talk about, really, unfortunately.
Sadly, in the UK.
And it was, I feel like if we had like a, a count up of the amount of times that we said Brexit, like it would only be equaled by the amount of times that we said open banking and COVID. You know what I mean? Like, I think those are the three things, aren't they? That was
I don't know. AI is coming. That's the current buzzword bingo.
Yes,
so I think we should have a drinking game rule for the shows,
I try and never say AI now. Like, actually, with all the stuff that we've been doing recently, journalists are really trying to be like, oh, what about the AI? And I'm like, the AI? And just trying to stay away from it as much as possible.
Our next question. When was our first ever After Dark? I don't need the exact date, but if you can give me the month or the year, David.
I mean, was it 2016? Was it October? No?
I wasn't here in 2016.
Oh, okay. 2017 then?
Correct.
Right, okay. Was it Halloween? Was it
no,
Halloween
that was
one?
the second
was
one.
Was it? Oh, okay. Valentine's Day?
No.
Oh, I'll give up.
You're very close. It was the 25th of September 2017. So we did one in September and then we did the second one was Halloween.
Did we do a serious one and then we were like, fuck it, let's wear costumes? Is that what happened?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine.
I remember Val was on our panel, the wonderful Val, and she had fully devil horns. I remember sort of helping her fix them onto her head, and everyone was really leaning into the theme. It was good fun. But first ever one, 25th of September 2017. We just it was a complete experiment, right? We were like, let's see if people would be interested in this. Kind of borrowed a space in a WeWork, invited our friends, who invited their friends, and the whole thing was much, much bigger than we ever thought it was going to be.
How many people came?
Haven't looked back. Oh gosh, I don't know. We didn't do tickets at that point. It was probably 50, but that was more than we expected.
Oh, well, it was way more than WeWork wanted us to have.
Yeah.
We got in quite a lot of trouble. But
we just said, can we borrow a room? And then far exceeded the capacity of the room.
Insight is I always hate After Darks, not because I hate After Dark. I love it. I just never think anybody's going to turn up. That's been the weirdest thing across all of these things is listeners, when they're a number, are kind of meh, okay, fine. But when they're real people that turn up and then you realize that the people in the audience are as smart as the people on the mics, you're like, actually, this is a community that's sort of got real momentum behind it. So that's been amazing. But equally, I still think nobody's ever going to turn up when we do After Darks, and they keep doing. So thank you if you have.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next question. To the nearest round number, how many different guests have we had on the show to date?
Ooh.
I'm trying to think through the average, when I host a show, how many of the guests on average are return guests versus new guests. And I tend to say it's a 50-50 balance. I don't know. So I'm going to say 500.
Ooh, punchy.
Nah, way more. If you kind of think we went crazy at one point. We were pumping out 3 episodes a week, weren't we?
Well, we've done 1,000 episodes. That's the whole point of the show. So
no, I know, but they had different
3 guests on each show.
They had different formats, didn't they? So some of them were 3 or 4 people. Some of them, when we did insight shows, would have 7 or 8
that's
people.
true. I forgot about the insight shows.
Kate's gone for, what did you say, 500?
I said 500, yeah.
I reckon 4,000. I'm going for 4,000.
DVD?
2,000. I don't know.
Okay, well now I get disappointed. The answer is 940.
Oh, that's
but it's almost, a new guest per episode, which considering some of them are just us. That's pretty good as well.
A phenomenal amount of people.
Yeah.
I want to know the list of people who came once and we were like, no, it's not going to work out. Or
do you want to know that?
Yeah. just slip that in the podcast notes for everybody.
According to data from Statista, how many new fintechs have launched globally since we began this podcast in 2016?
God.
It's got to be thousands. It's got to be
nearest 1,000 wins.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I guessed first last time, so everyone else can go first.
globally in the last 10 years or so?
Since 2016.
Oof.
60,000.
I'm going to go with 155,000.
Oh, wow.
I went there.
Okay.
400,000.
Whoa.
Oh my
goodness.
goodness.
Okay,
my
right.
wallet out.
Calm yourself down, guys. The answer is 31,000.
I went crazy on the first one, more conservative on the next one. So
How many are still alive? That's another question.
Well, quite.
A lot less.
The Prosecco is talking now. So.
All right. How many unicorns have we had on Fintech Insider?
Oh my goodness.
Like real
Let's
ones?
No, unfortunately.
That's
I'd
such
love
a shame.
that. But yes, no, how many companies have we had that have been valued over £1 billion? I went through a very long list of all the existing unicorns and counted all the ones that have been on the podcast. So,
Wow, Laura.
And just so
props.
we know, how many is in the existing
I
list?
don't know. Many.
I don't know, 200?
No. 75.
Are we counting banks?
No, like just
fintechs.
ones that have been like, kind of gone from
Newly
0
crowned.
and valued over.
Right.
30. I'm getting all this wrong anyway. So.
Okay, so we've got, what did you say?
75.
75,
30.
30, David.
50, I think I said.
Ooh, very close. 57
Ooh.
unicorns, which roughly, based on that 940 guess size, roughly, 1 in 15 of all companies featured has either been or gone on to become a fintech unicorn.
Wow, that's
Wow.
very interesting.
I feel like we've somehow contributed to that fiscal status. That
yeah, which totally claim credit.
if you'd like to contribute to the...
It's a GoFundMe.
And a little bonus question for you and potentially the listeners. Stephen Bartlett of Diary of the CEO fame and others has been on an episode of Fintech Insider. True or false?
True.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
so
it's
you're
true.
saying...
That's got to be true. Yeah, I mean,
It's true.
I was looking at David's face. I'm not going to lie.
I did that one. Like, I
Yeah.
remember it. Weirdly, I mean, they approached us, didn't they? And was like, Stephen's doing some stuff in sort of influencer marketing-y type
Yeah.
things. Like, do you want to come and...
Social chain it was his start.
And actually, he's a pretty good dude, to be honest with you. I mean, he told some weird stories about kind of like selling chocolate bars and stuff at his school and kind of that being the spark of his entrepreneurial start and whatnot. But yeah, he's a pretty cool dude. Doing some fun stuff.
There you
I
go.
saw it. Yeah, the listing of the episode is like Steve Bartlett. And I thought, this feels wrong. Like he's rebranded. He's Stephen. What's what? But maybe you're Steve back then. I don't
I
know.
get sent a
More
book every
serious.
so often and going like, what do you think of this? And he's doing a bit more in the fintech space. So watch this space if we get him back.
Yeah, he could make a reappearance. But there you go. That is your very brief Fintech Insider quiz.
Very, very good. All right. Welcome back, folks. We had a bit of a quick break, a few drinks, and now we are diving straight into the second half of our 1000th episode celebrations. We've got more clips lined up showcasing some of the biggest and best moments in fintech from the last 9 years. So let's get into it. Our next clip comes from a real fintech OG, Nick Ogden, founder of WorldPay, Clearbank, RTGS, Global, and so many more things that I don't have air in my lungs to continue that sentence. Let's hear from Nick now.
Well, hello, David and the Fintech Insider team. When I first got the email about this, I thought David Brear can't be 1,000 years old, but apparently it's the 1000th episode, so congratulations for that one. Looking back to 2016, I think the most memorable moment for me and for a lot of other people was the approval of Clearbank as the UK's first new clearing bank in December 2016. And the surprised look on the face of the Wall Street journalists at the press conference in early 2017 when they realised that Clearbank was a clearing bank and not just another challenger bank. Looking at the market since then, it's been quite interesting. There have been ups and downs, a few scandals here and there, but that's normal. Anyway, as we move forward and we look forward to another 20-odd years' time when we'll have David still around and the 3,000th episode of this program, it'll be interesting to see what's happened. So we'll see. It's interesting times. Just stay innovating, keep at it. Most importantly, have fun. And good luck with the party, David. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks very much, Nick. I think we're going to have to change what the G in OG stands for, given he was having a go at me there. But yeah, I mean, amazing stuff that those guys did. I always like to tell everybody that the idea for ClearBank happened in Wroxham, a tiny little village in Norfolk, not very far away from where I live as well. And you know, I think that's just me trying to do stuff for FinTech East, basically. But we'll see where we can go. But it is amazing. I do love the very literal naming of ClearBank as well. The fact that nobody picked up that it was a clearing bank all the way through to announcing ClearBank was an interesting one. But yeah, what do you guys think?
I mean, I was watching the England-Serbia game last night, and you know, ClearBank is popping up on the advertising boards, going around. This shows how boring I am, right? I'm watching the football. We're playing really well, and I'm still like, oh, look which fintechs are advertising.
Do you know what? That is a fair point, though. There was a period where we were like, oh my God, like they've got a tube ad. And now, like, you know, ClearBank and PensionBee.
Chase sponsored England football team.
It's just crazy. Like, fintech's gone proper mainstream,
did
isn't
the
it?
F1, didn't they?
Yeah. Revolut as well, sponsoring a car.
Every time I put on like a kids cartoon on YouTube for my kids, there's always
once a day, absolute max.
Only once a day.
I love the caveat that it's for your kids.
It's for my kids.
I watch cartoons.
Yeah, about black sheep. I mean, I'm a bit,
right.
You know,
okay, fine.
You know, but it starts with an advert for Monzo and then goes immediately into Revolut. I find that quite funny, and every single time it does that.
I think ClearBank is so interesting that obviously they've been so hugely successful. Like if you look at their website, just like the list of their clients, their partners is just like a who's who list of people that have shaken up the fintech space. So Tide, Alico, Wallets, Chip, Kraken, Raisin, eToro, Wealthify, like just, you know, the list goes on. So it kind of really shows, I think, again, how, again, the initial vibe around fintech was like, oh, look, it's just a fancy interface, or they've got like an interesting headline promotional thing, but it's not. It's about that kind of truly digital stack that goes all the way down the stack. And I think ClearBank have been so instrumental to that. Like actually, if you had the fancy stuff at the top, but you weren't really kind of continuing that all the way down to kind of the clearing side of things, you're not going to be able to create the kind of digital experiences that customers now expect. So I think, yeah, it's so great that they've had the success that they've had. And I think, yeah, it just really reflects that fintech is about the whole stack and not just, you know, a wallet or a payment card, whatever. It's the whole thing.
It's interesting as well, like the non-business bit, but the people bit. I mean, again, Nick's introduction is sort of at least 3 inhales of oxygen. You know, like the people who start great businesses have the potential to go and start other great businesses. You know, I think it's like, say, WorldPay, ClearBank, RTGS Global. But actually, like, you know, founders of Monzo are now moving into other things and doing other things, or Revolut are, or PayPal, whatever. Maybe not PayPal because that's Musk, isn't it? Went a bit off lately, didn't he? But first 10 swings were pretty effective, weren't they?
Isn't one of the Monzo founders doing something with alpacas or something? Or did I miss that?
Yes, he is. Yeah. I mean, a lot of money in that, I'll be honest with you. Like alpaca farming. Yeah. So it's interesting, those people who are kind of a bit of a nexus for making interesting things happen, like Nick. You know, there's 3 gigantic organizations there that have all been the idea out of one person's brain, and you know, that's a pretty good thing. Back to your point earlier on, David, about the cycle, and you know, having an industry or an environment that is fruitful for, hey, this is a good idea, and you know, pulling together people or resources or whatever to make it happen. Then that's it's good to see that those things are still happening.
Yeah, and there's something in there about the cycle of BaaS. I'm not talking about the fish here, right? The banking as a service. And
very important clarification.
Every time I talk about BaaS, I have to make the clarification. But actually, I mean, this is kind of the point. Like, it's been a while since I've spoken about BaaS. So it's been a while since we've had BaaS as a topic come up on the podcast. And I think it's been very rocky, I think, as he said in that message. Like, it's, you know, ClearBank are definitely a success story, but as anything, the industry is nowhere near as bigger as everybody was thinking it was 2016. I mean, everything was going to be a BaaS, right? Everything would be as a service, the whole banking stack. And there are some success stories, but there have also been some slow grinding gears. And I don't think that's just in the UK. I think that's pretty much everywhere in the world. There's lots of regions that BaaS still isn't really a thing. So there's something interesting, and that's the cycle, right? Because all these things come in cycles. I wonder what the next iteration of BaaS is going to be. What's that next fish?
Yeah, every sort of slice of financial services has a thing now, doesn't it, to a certain degree? Whereas before it was the gigantic structures of, the Temenos's and FIS's of the world in that sense. But I can't say BAS without thinking of Marco from Solaris Bank. Like, as far as moments from the podcast go, that was definitely one highlight from me, was them inviting us to go do a live show in Berlin, and Jason trying to explain Spinal Tap references to a bunch of German bankers in Berlin. Hilarious, I'll be honest with you. Like, very, very not up on Spinal Tap references, very, very, very good at football. Like, so there was at least a good balance there. Anyway.
And Spinal Tap are coming back.
I know.
Talk about cycles. There you go.
Yeah. Spinal Tap 2 coming out on Friday, apparently. Is this a product placement? Are we being sponsored by this? No. We'll move on.
I mean, that would be great, but sadly not.
All right. Our next clip is from somebody who is at the absolute forefront of driving innovation here in the UK, head of innovation at the FCA, Colin Payne. However, he has chosen something a little further from home as his standout.
One of the boldest fintech innovations since 2016 didn't come from a startup, didn't come from Silicon Valley. It actually came from a central bank. In 2020, Brazil's central bank launched Pix. It was an instant payment platform that let anyone send money, anytime, anywhere, for free. All you needed was a phone number or a QR code. No fees, no delays. And within 2 years, it was a wild success with over 140 million people using it. That's almost the whole adult population of Brazil. Pix didn't just compete with the private sector, it outperformed it. It crushed card fees. It made peer-to-peer transfers effortless. And it gave millions of unbanked Brazilians their first real digital payments tool. Even WhatsApp Pay couldn't keep up. And here's the real innovation. Pix was built by a regulator. It wasn't just about rules. It was about building public infrastructure for financial innovation. It showed the world again that regulators can drive growth, competition, and inclusion.
Very cool. Thanks very much, Colin. And it's interesting, back to that point we were making earlier on around necessity. Actually, if you've got lots of, fake currency knocking around a system, then, or you've got no way for people to actually be involved in a financial system in any way, shape or form, then providing basic infrastructure is an amazing thing to do. I mean, parallels to the UK of like the, payments sort of central body between all of the banks didn't work, did it? But in Brazil, just scaled in an amazing way.
And now I think in the UK, we've got something called the NPA, the New Payments Architecture or something, which has been bubbling on for a very long time. But I think he's absolutely right to call that out. And it kind of makes sense. He works at a regulator. And also, full disclosure, Colin used to be my boss. And he's an amazing boss for all those listeners out there.
Oh, I was hoping for some dirt there.
Yeah, well, that's all fine.
Another beer, David?
Another beer. But I think the next iteration of that is the stablecoin. I think what we're picking up on a lot is that the kind of, it really is those payment rails in countries like Brazil and, Latin America writ large. Now in the UK, well, in the EU, I should say, because Brexit, you've got MICA, you've got Genius coming in the US. So I think he's right to say that with the right regulatory environment, you can have a lot of innovation coming through. I hope that we can do this again with AI in the UK. And I know Colin is really, really pushing for it, but I don't know.
I think it's really hard to get your head around the sheer scale of the numbers and the impact of Pix, 140 million people, and almost the entire adult population of Brazil is like. There are very few kind of products that have that kind of cut through.
Well, I think even those numbers I think are out of date. Like the last ones I checked before the show, I think it's more like 160 million people.
So
it just goes up and up and up and up.
I don't know, maybe some more. I don't know. It's phenomenal. Just like kind of only sort of M-Pesa is sort of having a similar impact. But other than that, this is mad. And the fact that it kind of comes from a regulator, obviously that makes sense that Colin would pick this as a standout. But that in and of itself, coming from a regulator, not a private company, is what's kind of really impressive about it as well.
I wonder, we've seen it, you talk about M-Pesa, but actually geographies, there's the sort of leapfrogging as well, right? Actually the absence of something that, sort of works actually allows you to create something that does. And often you can, jump a bunch of generations of iterations because you can look at what somebody else has done in another part of the world and, copy, right? It does make me wonder sometimes whether, the the Western world and our faster payments bubble and our whether the speed of innovation is fast enough to stay ahead of where everybody else is, or whether we end up being leaped by somewhere that actually just because they can or just because they need to means that they do. Like Africa is a really good example, like leaped a whole generation of digital banking on gigantic screens because who's going to carry a laptop up the top of the jungle type thing. It's I always found that weird actually. Again, random, I know I'm going off on a tangent like a drunken relative in the corner here often, but again, one of my highlights was going and doing a Fintech Insider on stage in Rwanda, bizarrely, with Chris Skinner, non-executive director of Past for 11FS, and exactly that. It was like I had like the best mobile signal halfway up a jungle going to visit the gorillas in Rwanda than I did in Norfolk, which is just weird, So
well, I think that's understandable, David. If you've been to Norfolk, it's understandable.
It's those thick flint walls. That's what it was.
No, I mean, I'm so glad that we've spotlighted Pix. I think we're at such an interesting juncture, I think, in like these huge markets, huge potential. Everyone talks about, the US, Brazil, China, India, and they've all taken such different approaches to kind of how they're trying to push these innovations. So I think anything where Donald Trump is getting quite cross at Pix, and I think that gives you a sign that they're doing something pretty interesting. So the fact that this government-led initiative is forcing out something even as big as WhatsApp, like even WhatsApp couldn't compete with Pix. I think that tells you kind of the scale of it. And now they are looking at how they, to David's point, how they introduce a digital currency. I think they're calling it Drex, which I don't know. Was that a Bond villain? Or was that Drexler? I can't remember. I need to think less about Bond villains.
Like a WWE wrestler.
Yeah, it's an interesting name choice, but maybe it means something in the local languages in Brazil. I don't know.
Resident Bond expert.
Oh, okay.
Drax from Moody. Very good.
Drax. That's it. Oh, of course, I knew. There we go. Anyway,
we have fact checkers in the corner these days. It's quite impressive.
But I think that will be to me that's the super exciting thing that I'm looking to see is like they've got that phenomenal uptake of the Pix platform. If they could then translate that through into a digital currency, like they could leapfrog so many other countries in the world that are still just like getting their knickers in a twist about like, stable coins. They could just
like us.
Move past it. Yeah. So I'm glad we focused on it.
And how much of that is just, like you say, relentless focus on solving a problem versus to your point of the stablecoins thing, it's like, what do we do with this technology? Like it's, the AI bit or the stablecoin bit or the, blockchain bit or the, like we've had the very sort of fashionista version every year of like what is hot, almost like we should highlight that for the last 10 years because it was kind of like, I don't know if you guys have all sort of witnessed this as well, but it's just the influx of people who are expert DMing you on LinkedIn about those individual things. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I feel like AI is probably like the most sort of relentlessly abused buzzword right now. But sorry.
So I think there's something interesting here about why open banking has not worked in the UK, right? So it's a constant question that comes up in panels all the time. Like, why has banking not worked in the UK? This goes back to Pix. The difference is not just the regulations. All very well. You can write rules and, make it all of that. But if you look at Brazil, if you look at India, UPI, they put money behind it. That is what we didn't do. We didn't put money, we didn't fund it, right? So India and UPI is subsidized by the government. And I think this is kind of the point about what happens next if we are going to embark on trying to harness those buzzwords like AI or what's the future of open banking. The government does really need to think about how it actually funds these things.
Yeah, putting standards out there and hoping the market works it out, sometimes works out, sometimes doesn't.
Yeah.
But I guess there has been some success to it. I think there is transactions, there is change happening. There's whole businesses built on it.
Yes, exactly.
And at least we didn't do what America is and let JP Morgan cock it all up with, charging everybody out the arse for it.
Interesting. It'll be so interesting to see what happens. I was speaking about the future for the next 1,000. Like, where does that go? Yeah.
But it'll be interesting because now everyone looks at Pix and thinks like, wow, amazing. How do we replicate that in our markets? But again, to go back to our previous conversation around COVID, like Pix launched in the midst of COVID. And so it had this huge driver of people using it to receive support payments from the government. So again, like you can look at can you just lift and shift something that has been successful in one market in one moment in time? Really, really hard to know. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like going to the Galapagos Islands and going, we should have really big tortoises in Norfolk. And it's like,
maybe you should.
They've evolved specifically for there.
I would go to Norfolk if there were large tortoises.
Right,
Same. They're just in a big dome in the centre of London, though. I mean, you can just go see them.
I'll work on it, guys.
Where's that?
The zoo. The zoo, Kate.
Right, okay.
The literal zoo.
If the Monzo guy can get alpacas, then I think I should have tortoises. Let's see what happens.
Tortoises.
All right, next up, we have the absolute legend. That is Sam Moore, former 11 and host of this show as well. Ex-Google and now over at Move, and still very much our Uncle Sam to many of us. Let's have a listen to him now.
Hey, it's Uncle Sam. I'm recording this from San Diego at a conference I'm at back in the US. 1,000 episodes. Unfreaking believable. Congrats to all the OGs that are there. So David, Ross, Kate, Laura, Michael, just the whole crew. Honestly, this is just never saw it coming. Congrats, guys. And well done, just putting out a continuously top-notch product. Biggest stories in fintech since 2016. I'm going to go from a U.S. perspective, all the merger and acquisitions. So TSYS, where I used to work, First Data, Global Payments, FIS, Fiserv. It's bonkers. It's Game of Thrones. Everybody's marrying each other and building up. It's just, and fintech did it. Fintech pushed them to do that. So there you go. US, fintech. We're still behind Europe.
Always good to hear from Sam. And cutting class and recording something at back of the class as always in a random conference in San Diego. Has anybody been to San Diego?
No. I hear it has a good zoo, speaking of zoos.
It's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in my entire life. Yeah, it's like visiting America in the 1960s. Do you know what I mean? It's like at the peak Americana, California surfing lifestyle. That's it. I've never felt more British than when visiting San Diego. But they don't appreciate Anchorman jokes either. What do you guys think? I mean, the sort of big organizations eating each other, we sort of touched a little bit on the acquisition thing earlier on, but that's definitely happening. I mean, just today, Lloyds and Curve, right? So, fintech being acquired, or even big banks being acquired by other big banks with Credit Suisse and UBS. This is kind of a trend as old as financial services, right? Do well, buy off the other person.
There's also a huge amount of private equity activity as well, all across Europe. I think he's right to point that out, that the M&A market is on fire, particularly at that mid-cap, small-cap kind of area. But I don't know, what's the big story there? What does that mean to your point? Do well, get acquired? What is it the story that the idea is very good, but maybe the distribution isn't there, so it needs to scale, so it needs to get
I think the model is very different in the US.
Yeah.
And actually, we touched on this in a show recently about kind of what's not really working with the UK, or what hasn't been working with the UK system, which is that sort of recycling of entrepreneurs in the US market is really well trodden. Your dream is to be bought, not your dream is to run the business for the next 50 years. So actually, the quicker you can scale and sell, that's the outcome that people are kind of looking for. I think it's different here. And actually, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I'm on the fence of what is a good and a bad thing. It's just a different ecosystem working in a different way. Back to my tortoises metaphor again.
Oh, it's tricky though, isn't it? Because I was trying to think back to moments that I remember on the show, and I can't remember which episode it was, but when Simple got acquired, and it just felt like this moment of mourning.
I remember that.
Where you had this great fintech that had built some really interesting services for customers, was really starting to explore kind of some, again, from my biased perspective, some really interesting customer problems, how it could solve them, and then it gets acquired and, squashed, if we're honest. It's interesting if you talk about, what the future trajectory is for the US as a whole market. Does that model actually serve it to kind of, from a customer perspective, our customers are the best customer platforms going to survive, or are they just going to get acquired by these enormously wealthy banks that just squash them and keep trotting out substandard journeys.
Thank goodness for Wi-Fi on the show, but Simple was bought in 2014. So like 2 years before our first podcast.
Well, I think maybe that
it was the shutting down in 2021.
It was that's it. Okay.
Yeah. But even then, though, it touches to what you were saying earlier on around like the banks learning and developing, and like actually was that a bad thing? Like because actually the amount of people who were working on Simple that went into doing really big things within BBVA and transforming kind of actually how that organization's culture kind of functions, you know. It's not always the outcome that organization would want when you put your sweat and blood and tears into a logo or a name, but they definitely had the impact on the system still.
It is interesting on this show. Like we kind of have these stories that come around, and you know, generally just as a kind of observer of listening into a lot of these shows is like when, you know, big institution buys another big institution, people are like, oh yeah, guess it makes sense. Like they're doing this, you know, to merge or whatever. But to Kate's point, like there seems to be a lot more of an emotive response when it's a fintech that gets acquired. Like somehow they didn't succeed, and I wonder if that is a cultural thing of like to your point, like in the US, the idea is to sell, but here perhaps it isn't, and then you kind of end up with that like, oh, what did they do wrong? You know, which isn't necessarily the case. It's just sort of a kind of cultural thing of like, oh, if you've sold out, you didn't quite hit your goals in some way, which is kind of interesting.
Well, it depends on why the person who's buying the company is doing it.
Yeah, why they want you, I guess.
It differs so much.
Yeah.
And weirdly, you know, through the years, you end up with different, and like I say, sort of being in the ecosystem, you sort of hear different things about people trying to buy people just to stop them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus, you know, to really advance their own agenda. But yeah, naming no names.
But it is interesting, like how this kind of M&A train is kind of every week our inboxes fill up with like press releases about this kind of thing, and just like from every stage. So in talks to, rumor has it that this is happening, all the way up until it actually does. And that's kind of interesting as well. So like just the sheer idea that someone might be looking to buy someone else is newsworthy. It is kind of an interesting kind of view of where we are in the industry as well.
Yeah, and I guess the other angle on that as well is like your brain gets a bit warped to numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like actually like the stuff coming out with, Lloyds and Curve now where, you know, theoretically, you know, rumors are all to be believed that it's going to cost them somewhere about 110 million to acquire all of that capability. In your head, you're like, well, 110 million is a fucking lot of money. Do you know what I mean? So like that team have created a business that actually one of the biggest banks in the UK thinks will transform them. You know, that's an amazing achievement. But you kind of almost need to remember some of the lineage of what's gone into, you know, what has Simple changed in BBVA, or, you know, 5 years from now, how much different will Lloyds be because of the acquisition of Curve, you know?
So we need to start measuring in commerce banks again.
Yes. Or a different ruler. We need to pick one. Feel free to send suggestions in, podcast@11fs.com. All right, our next clip is from somebody who was on the very first episode of Fintech Insider. So we've had to invite her back to give her thoughts. Sophie Gibbord, strategic sparring partner and building alpha.
1,000 episodes. Congratulations, guys. I vividly remember this very first episode that we did in 2016 with Anna Herrera, David and Jason on Brexit. So much has happened since then. My key points would be crypto, of course, that changed the way financial services and markets operate forever by challenging the ways they were operating in the past. There is, of course, open banking that put people back in power with their financial data and payments, and roll out from Europe through the world. Neobanks that were back then a gimmick or mentioned as being potentially a gimmick, and now Monzo, Revolut, Nubank have proven the contrary. And finally, embedded finance, enabling any organizations to offer financial services to their users, whether they are a bank or not, and becoming a big part of the revenues of those organizations. So I would cheer you guys, and here come the next 1,000. Thank you.
Very, very cool. Super Miss Sophie and Anna, actually, both of them, both fountains of knowledge in fintech, but so non-fussed by all of it. You know, I mean, it's like Sophie was running Fedor and just like the most chill person in the entire world. It was kind of crazy, but yeah, it's so nice to have both of them from right from the beginning. I think Anna actually broke that we were starting a business right at the beginning. I can't remember which one maybe Bloomberg or somewhere that she was.
Bloomberg now. I think she was at Reuters before.
Okay, there we go. But yeah, hey, scooping since the beginning. So yeah, definitely the sort of crypto side of things we touched on a little bit earlier on. It's kind of been a constant drumbeat of like, you know, gaining momentum, hemorrhaging value, gaining value, hemorrhaging credibility, bringing credibility. You know, there's a sort of an interesting cycle with the crypto thing. I feel like a lot of like the really crazy crypto people are now AI experts. So like the people who are remaining are actually doing interesting things, aren't they?
Yeah, there's been a clear out, right? I'm happy she raised crypto actually, because we haven't discussed it yet. And it just is this thing that just refuses to die. And it's, I mean, I made a decision very early on in my career that like I was involved in a crypto startup many years ago. And I was like, you know what? I don't get this. This is too complicated. I don't understand what all this programmatic algorithmic stuff is. So I'm going to back out. But it is incredible, right? And now it's so political, right? I mean, my crypto portfolio is doing great, all $4,000 of it, doing really, really good. But you're seeing institutions now really take this seriously and, you know, launch their own funds off the back of it, launch their own treasury solutions off the back of it. But I don't know where it goes in the future. Like it's just still so volatile, right, as a thing.
I mean, I have very little expertise on crypto, but I think one of the projects that I'm most grateful to have had the opportunity to work on in my, you know, when we're not doing the podcast, we do cool things on the sort of ventures consultancy side as well.
Wait, what? We do what?
And I had the opportunity to work with, you know, a fairly substantial stablecoin provider at one point, and speaking to people that were using, you know, their product and their services, and you know, meeting people in LATAM, in Africa that were using this platform. And I think we sometimes are a bit guilty of having a very sort of Western-led attitude towards some of these things. Like in those markets, I mean, we have grown up expecting our currency to remain very stable. We've grown up in very stable currency environments. Whereas, you know, if you speak to someone in Argentina, actually, like their history with money is completely different, and their understanding of like how you can expect a currency to behave is completely different. So I think obviously there's still a long way for crypto to go, but I think the impact it has had for customers in some parts of the world has been game-changing. Like you can actually put money into a currency, into a stable coin, and have confidence that it will keep its value, which for some people is genuinely life-changing in markets where, you know, the main national currency can fluctuate hugely from week to week. So I'm not really sure what the kind of concluding point of that is. Sorry, Prosecco.
It's important.
But crypto is important, and it's not going away. We've not quite cracked it, but it's already changed lives from people around the world, and I think it's going to have more impact. But what one of the things that come up is what's going to happen in the next 1,000 episodes, and I'm sure crypto will be a big part of that.
Yeah, those fluctuations are like a thing that we don't really understand. You know, I've got a 500 billion note from Zimbabwe on my desk at home, and it's like I sort of use that as a reminder of like, we think we know stuff, but we don't. You know what I mean? In like
imagine you wake up one morning and your savings have just gone. You've not done anything wrong. You've not messed anything up. You've not gone on a big McDonald's splurge or whatever. Your money's just gone.
Yeah, it's not physically gone. The number is still there. It's just that number is now worth nothing.
Yeah,
it's just like so. Yeah. Like I'm used to the zero balance thing after a whatever, you know, like, but actually, you know, the reality of like things being not worth what you thought they were anymore, like that's kind of a weird thing. But actually to your point, you know, I have actually experienced that in the crypto space. Like, you know, I've kind of gone, I think it was 2018, 2017, XRP went all in.
Yep.
Like when, like not quite all in because we could afford to have kids, like, you know, but but pretty in. Fuck. like that went bad for a really long time, to a point where, you know, I'd written off, I'm not going to say how much money, but I'd written off all of that money.
Yeah. Did you contemplate selling the children?
Yeah, like at least they can survive on one kidney. So, you know, all the vital organs had gone already, you know, but fuck, it's worth a lot of money now. Like, and actually, so there's something in the old mentality to, you know, older markets. Like the most successful investment is the one you forget about, right? That's the mentality for that. I don't think that's true if you put it in some shitcoin though. You know, like I think there's still staples of crypto that make certain sense, because there's got to be longevity and legitimacy behind the businesses that are there. Yeah. But also it helps if they win a really big case against the SEC. So that's good too.
You're right. Bitcoin has logic, even if it is just an algorithm. It does have logic. There's scarcity, mine it. You know, the difficulty increases. All of that gamification makes sense. But some random, like, I don't know, Doge or like whatever Trump's latest shill is, like, stay away.
Yeah. But it would be interesting to think if we hadn't bothered doing the podcast and spent the money that we spent on that Zoom on Bitcoin, like what would have that netted by the end of now?
I was mining this stuff. I mean, I was burning through, you know, video cards and desperately trying to get as much of it as I possibly could. And then, yeah, I sort of sold it when it was like $50, you know.
Yeah. I think that the best thing is to give up all hope on it and then be surprised 10 years later. So, you know, I am going to have a ceremonial I told you so, Sarah, like my wife, who was like, yeah, you fucked up there, didn't you? And I was like, long game. Let's see what happens.
Hoddle.
Look at me now. Look at me now. Anyway, all right. We are never short of a big hitting CEO here at Fintech Insider. And our final clip is from Romy Savona, who is the founder and CEO over at PensionBee and 11FS Hall of Famer as well. And we wanted to end with her, as she makes such an impactful point that really sums up everything that we've discussed here today.
The most impactful moment since July 2016 has been the realization that fintech is finance. Companies that were challenging traditional financial services have now gone public, scaled to billions in assets, and weathered multiple market cycles, all in under a decade. We've seen this shift play out dramatically in the retirement services industry, where we are proud to have set the standard for digital-first experiences, transparent fees, and actually putting the customer in control. And we've seen this across the fintech space broadly. Innovative ideas have staying power because they work for consumers. So I don't think the most impactful moment has been a single breakthrough as much as a track record. In the last 10 years, we've proved that when you build something people actually need and you do it well, the market reshapes around you.
100% right. I mean, it's very similar to what we heard from Stripe, you know, the conversation earlier on. It's like, do things people want and it all works out, doesn't it?
And then the terminology changes around it. Like, you know, I mentioned earlier that we no longer really hear about BaaS so much. I mean, you hear these things like embedded finance, like BaaS, open banking to an extent as well, coming up as themes, almost because people don't really kind of understand them. And maybe fintech is a little bit like that, but eventually it sort of melts away as like, oh no, this is just finance. This is finance. There is technology behind it, but of course we have technology. Technology needs to power finance. Yeah. And so maybe there is a day when fintech as a term just sort of dies because it's no longer necessary.
Do you know what? It's weird actually. So I'm off to Money 2020 in in the Middle East next week.
Oh, you've not mentioned that at all in the last week.
Yeah. Look, it's raining in London. It's sunny there. I'm happy, right? But it's funny. I've started putting on my slides now. It's like we've been talking about this for a decade, but these messages have still not landed with everybody, you know, which is that view that many people have just reorchestrated the way that they did something rather than leaning into the opportunities that are ahead of them. And I think often that is what separates the fintech players versus the incumbents, which is kind of first principle thinking and building up from the ground up and the potential that actually is there with technology or with regulation or with whatever that, you know, opportunities are in front of you versus this is how we've done it and this is how we've been successful in the past. And I kind of feel like the message is sort of, I remember Jason saying about 3 years in is like, board is saying the same thing now. Like, board is saying the same thing. And it's like, yeah, but by the time you're bored about saying it, it's probably settling in with the first row. And like 5 years in, it's the second row, and 7 years in, it's the fifth row. And, you know, I kind of feel like those messages are landing now. So I do feel slightly like my standard keynote is turning into a sing-along at this stage, though, which is, but yeah, the messages are still resonating, which is good. All right, guys. Finally, we're going to try and wrap up things because, I mean, how do you summarize 10 years of amazing contributors and all of the things that we've covered, all of the stories, all of the acquisitions, all of the raises, all of the hires, all of those things? But what do you think is missing from your perspective? What stands out as the fintech moment that still deserves a quick shout out? You've got to kind of chuck that in if you want to. If you've got a moment as a listener that you think we've missed, feel free to deal with me and tell me we've fucked up. But anything from everybody in the room?
I mean, we've not talked at all about like super apps. Buzzword bingo, I suppose. But yeah, just the emergence. You know, we've talked a bit about LATAM, a bit about Africa. We've not really touched on Asia so much, but you know, some of the platforms that have emerged in China, in Alipay, Grab. We spoke to an amazing company in the Philippines. You know, there's just some phenomenal platforms that are being built in those markets that have not started maybe with an initial hook in financial services, but have used that to build out this phenomenal experience for customers that encompasses so many other parts of their lives. And so now what we're seeing is other markets looking at that and sort of thinking like, oh, we want a piece of that pie. So yeah, we've not really talked about that, but we probably don't have time to. So.
There's weird sort of like moments as well. Like you remember when Australia tried to resist Apple Pay? That was weird. Oh yeah. Like they were like, yeah, no, we're not doing it. And then they are. So, you know, just shows Apple, they're going to power through everything, aren't they, in that way? And even Apple Pay, I remember, I think it was Sharon on the podcast, Sharon O'Dea, being like the biggest advocate for Apple Pay on everything, and actually feeling like trepidation about using it the first few times because we're really British and we're scared about being rejected by anything, aren't we? So, but it's weird, all of those moments over the last 10 years that have kind of led us to here, really.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to pick up on what you were saying about us going to Riyadh next week, for example. So for me...
Kate's going to swing for you in a minute. Careful.
We're going to the Middle East.
Me stuck at home in dreary Britain whilst you guys are sunning yourselves in Riyadh. I'm not bitter at all.
To your point, Kate, about like, you know, Latin America and emerging markets, we've had the great privilege of working in a lot of incredible countries in the Middle East. We've done, for example, we wrapped up a project recently in Jordan, and I've been out to Jordan once to run a series of workshops. Constantly impressed by the pace of innovation and development and the kind of drive in that region to do some cool stuff. Comes back to the point about like leapfrogging. The regulators are also doing some really, really interesting things. So it's an incredibly dynamic region that's sort of middle classing. I don't know if that's a thing, very fast. So
gentrifying, I think might be the posher word. I don't know.
Lots of sort of hipster cafes coming in like all over Riyadh. I don't know. But yeah, the Middle East, that's my thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting when I sort of was thinking about the show and starting to ask people for their moment, they're obviously a lot cleverer than me, and they haven't come up with a moment. They've come up with a general theme and a sort of trajectory of what the industry's kind of been leading towards, sort of, as Romy was saying, like actually changing people's perceptions that fintech is just finance. Like it's you know, it's maybe done in a slightly different way, but it is this kind of relationship we have with money. But yeah, so because of that, I was kind of surprised that some like key individual moments weren't chosen. Just things that, from working on this show, like just ran the headlines for absolutely ages. Some of which would be like Wirecard scandal. That was enormous. The amount of players kind of, you know, impacted by that, but also dragged into that whole mess. Like that went on for ages and ages. That was enormous. The whole SVB collapse on both sides of the Atlantic and how that was kind
what, Laura? We didn't talk about SVB.
No, we didn't.
You're right.
I was genuinely expecting these to come up when I put the call out for input, and we did not get these. I'm surprised.
There's only so
we
much
did
time.
talk about M&A more broadly, which obviously
there's been a lot. I
touches
think
on.
this is
But
the point, right?
Exactly. Like this industry does not stand still. That is why we're on 1,000 episodes, because there is so much for us to talk about all of the time. Even if it feels like we're saying the same things, we're usually saying them with a different lens of here we are in 2025 or 24 or wherever, and things have changed. This is the new take on it. Even if, you know, as you're saying, like it sounds like we've been kind of banging the same drum for a while, but different people are responding to it in different ways, which always gives us something new and something exciting to talk about on this show.
It's mad. Like every time, you know, obviously as you said at the beginning, like just there's a phenomenal team behind the scenes who do so much to make the podcast run. And every time the next edition of the show notes drops, I kind of open up thinking like, oh, surely there won't be that much this week. I've not heard that much. I'm like, oh my gosh, so much has happened. So yeah, as you say, it never sleeps. Fintech never sleeps.
And on that note, it's probably a good place to sort of wrap this up. But I guess looking a little bit ahead, like 1,000 episodes in, so much covered, so many news stories, so many different people to sort of hold the candle for fintech in the various different parts of the world that we've covered it. Where do you think we're going to get in the next 1,000? Where do we get to? DBG, this is a hospital pass of throwing the first question to you here, my friend, but where are we going to get to?
What do you mean? As in, like, where does the industry get to?
Yeah.
I yes. I've had 2 beers for this. 2 beers is a lot for me now with all the children I have at home. I would like to see, I think, David, you made the point that there is still a gulf between a lot of incumbent banks and fintech. And I would like to see somehow the big crazy question of what do we do with infrastructure, because that's always been the block. If you work in any one of these big banks, you know what needs to happen. It's the how, and it is a multi-billion-dollar question that no one has really solved. There is maybe a sense that agentic AI can come in and start automating some of these workflows, taking cost out, and they can solve that problem. So I think there's a story there about infrastructure and cost with agentic AI in there somewhere. But I think that's the gap, which I think you quite rightly flagged.
Cool.
Yeah.
Lots of huge amounts of opportunity in that. At least 10 years of development for sure. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
So what I mean, very selfishly, what the question is about the next 1,000 episodes of Fintech Insiders. So personally, I'm just going to float. I think we should continue focusing globally. I think we should focus on lots of exciting tropical markets that we need to go and record episodes in. Personally, very interested in LATAM, Africa, Asia. So I think if we could go do some shows in those markets, I think that'd be great.
So Kate wants to travel, Laura.
I want to travel.
Caribbean, escape the children.
Yeah. Laura.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting point. I think what's interesting is like how many more markets we're talking about now. And I think like kind of to your point around like, when you first start, the front row are listening and you gradually take it through the auditorium. I think it'll be interesting in the next 1,000 episodes of like which new markets start becoming leaders. Who are we speaking to? Who are the standout guests we want to get on from new companies that don't even exist yet? And where are they in the world? I think like there's been such an opening up even, since the years that we've been doing this. I think it'll be really, really interesting to see where the next kind of hubs are. The kind of type of company that is the new Stripe or whoever, like the new sort of standout leaders. And yeah, if it's taken 9 years to get this far, like in 9 years' time, I literally don't know what that can be. But that's the exciting bit, I think. There's like just so much more still to come.
What about you, David?
I don't really know. I'll be honest. Like I wouldn't have known 1,000 episodes ago where we were today, really. Like the industry has changed so much. Like the people doing things, where organizations are, the scale of valuations, the impact people expect, like kind of all of these things have changed so dramatically that actually any guess that I could have 1,000 episodes from now would probably be completely and utterly wrong. That's probably the most exciting thing about this. We not wanting to kind of say it, but it's like we talk about digital banking being 1% finished. I still think we are. Like actually, I still think as an industry, given the pace of change and all of the things that are happening and all of the amazing opportunities that befit all of the startups that will start up from here to then, like that's a amazing thing to kind of look at. So it's it's fun. Isn't it lovely to work in an industry that hasn't stopped?
Yeah.
Like that's an amazing thing to experience because it's kind of like a gigantic fast-flowing water rapids. Like, you either get on board and figure out how to paddle or you're fucked, right? And that's probably the biggest advice we can give to anybody out there in plainest terms. It's figure it out or you're fucked.
Keep paddling.
Indeed. As always, if you want to join this conversation or share your top moment from what has shaped your fintech journey since 2016, you can find us on social media at 11FS or Fintech Insider, or email us on podcasts@11fs.com. Right, what we're going to be doing here is marking the end of the show. Let's do what any good birthday demands. Cut a very special Fintech Insider cake and pop open a bottle of fizz to toast another 1,000 episodes of leading fintech conversations, innovation, and disruption. Cheers to the journey ahead. Goodbye.
Cheers. Most successful fintechs didn't begin with a sprawling suite of features. They started by doing one thing exceptionally well, something that solved a real, underserved customer need. At 11FS, we offer the research, design, and product expertise to help you not only identify your differentiator, but to take it to market as well. Through our proposition labs, our experts can move you from a vague concept to a validated, investment-ready proposition, quickly and confidently. Launching a new fintech venture is hard, but with the right process, team, and insights, it doesn't have to be a gamble. Visit 11fs.com/ventures to find out more.
In today's fast-changing digital world, proving your company is trustworthy isn't just important for growth, it's essential. And that's why Vanta is here. Vanta helps companies of all sizes get compliant fast and stay that way with industry-leading AI, automation, and continuous monitoring. So whether you're a startup tackling your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001 or an enterprise manager vendor risk, Vanta's trust management platform makes it quicker, easier, and more scalable. Vanta also helps you complete security questionnaires up to 5 times faster so you can win bigger deals sooner. The results? According to a recent IDC study, Vanta customers slash over $500,000 a year in costs and are 3 times more productive. Establishing trust isn't optional. Vanta makes it automatic. Visit vanta.com/insider to sign up for a free demo today. That's VANTA.com/insider.